I think that it's a very interesting time in terms of politics and where Gen Z is heading.
I do see a shift to the right from Gen Z.
I do see an agenda to push leftist ideology or leftist concepts onto the general public.
Kids as young as like 7, like being like, "Oh, did I offend you, you liberal?"
Welcome to our National Conversation, a podcast in which we discuss politics from all angles. We are completely nonpartisan, and all views, respectfully stated, are welcome here. Our podcast is unique in that it is hosted and run by students who are focused on finding solutions to the biggest problems facing America.
Greetings and welcome. My name is Jeff Hall. I'm the founder of our National Conversation. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit group, and we specialize in civil conversations where all sides are welcome. We have Republicans, we have Democrats, we have independents. We like everybody equally, and we like to keep it all civil at all times. So today we're going to be talking about Gen Z and the upcoming elections. Today is November 3rd, 2025. So tomorrow there is an election in California, New York, and other places. And then we'll be looking ahead also to 2026 and then 2028. So let's find out where Gen Z's head is at. You're seeing all of the students who are assembled today. These are student interns from all across the country, and we have a mix of views, and let's dive right in. Before we dive right in, I do want to cite a few statistics. I went on AI today and found some information that I thought was very interesting. They say Gen Z is actually split into two different segments. Students who are 18 to 21 lean more Republican, supporting the GOP by nearly 12 points, while those aged 22 to 29 favor Democrats by about 6 points. Across the generation, about 25% of Gen Z identifies as Republican, 35 to 40% as Democrat, and a striking 30 to 40% as independent or politically homeless, much higher than older generations. So that's an interesting split. So let's just jump right in. I consider myself very moderate. I'm completely neutral in this conversation. I'm obviously not a member of Gen Z, and I'd like to call on Alexandra first because she's a self-identified conservative. What do you think's going on out there, Alexandra?
Yeah, well, I think that it's a very interesting time in terms of politics and where Gen Z is heading. I have noticed a split between the younger generation Z and older generation Z, and I think a lot of people have too. Definitely seen in the 2024 election with a lot of younger Gen Z members shifting more towards the right. And you see things from different polls, like the Yale Youth poll recently just did a study where they determined that, like you were saying, generations that are between the ages of 18 to 21 are much more right-leaning, whereas older generations from 22 and older are a bit more left-leaning. So I think that in terms of the midterm election and the presidential election especially, it's going to be an interesting call. But from what I've seen from the studies that I've observed and just the predictions at the moment, it definitely looks like it's leaning more in favor of Republicans overall. I think that in terms of the midterms, usually you would expect to see during midterm elections a bit more people turning against the presidential party, but it doesn't seem to be veering that way so far from what I've seen. So I don't know. I think it's going to be an interesting a time in 2026 when we see what turns out with that.
Okay, so let's say this shift really is occurring, that the younger half of Gen Z is now starting to lean more Republican. Tell us why you think this is happening, Alexandra.
Well, I personally am a Republican, though I tend to be pretty independent politically, but I've always been very conservative. And I think that over the years, there's just been such a shift push towards the left in everything. You see it in media, entertainment, news, literature, schools. It's just been a constant push for the left and left-leaning ideologies. And I think that at a certain point, a lot of it just goes too far. I mean, you see a lot of the ideas have become very radical on the left over the years. And I think that it's just the pendulum swinging the other way. Things are starting to even out a bit more, where a lot of people are just turning back the other way at this point, especially I think young men in Gen Z. And I think that a lot of that is because they've just been, frankly, from what I've seen, demonized over the years. They've been told that they are toxic and being masculine is wrong, and it's a bad thing. And I think that that's also part of what helped President Trump win the election in 2024, due to the fact that there was a very strong shift from Gen Z men taking his side, which it's not unsurprising when you see that over the years the Democrats have been demonizing these men for so long just for being men, that they're going to naturally be inclined to take the side that treats them a little bit more with respect.
Okay, who would like to speak for the Democrats or the left? I know Tanya is supposed to show up any minute now. She's not here yet. She's kind of our designated progressive. Matthew, how about you?
I mean, I can speak like for myself personally. I can see why with Alex it's lean. Gen Z has leaned more to the right, and we've seen that in the upcoming election. But I wouldn't necessarily say the whole like um the Democrats have like necessarily like demonized like men for like being who they are and like toxic masculinity and stuff. I think it's just more exposing like I guess the bad habits of what some of these men do because they are some bad things that these men do, but I think we have to come to a point where we realize like we have to talk about it because if we don't talk about it, the habits are just going to keep on going and going. So that's how I feel about the whole shift to the right. But I do agree. I do see a shift to the right from Gen Z.
Now, Matthew, you are a self-identified liberal, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, are you finding it's harder to be a liberal these days, given what's happening in the country right now?
Um, I don't find it necessarily that hard. I mean, I don't talk about I talk about politics with like certain friends. I I guess it depends on the day of like when like the topic of conversation. So certain days, yeah, but some days it's just like you have your opinion, I have mine. It is what it is.
Okay. Anybody here self-identify as an independent?
May I speak as a Green Party? Would that be considered as an independence?
Which party?
Green Party.
Green. Yeah, go for it.
Well, thank you very much. So I do see a bit of a shift to the right within my generation, speaking as someone in outside of the Democrats and the Republicans. It's hard for me to get my thoughts out, but I don't believe it's because the Democrats are demonizing people, young white men. I believe it's because of how do I say this? Rainbow washing. I don't know if that's a correct term, but from my opinion, from my perspective, I do see a lot of an agenda to push leftist ideology or leftist concepts onto the general public, but not without much substance. How do I say this? Nothing substantial, I should say. Liberal for the sake of being liberal, kind of. This is a term that my generation uses: virtue posting. Like you want to be seen as nice and caring, but it's only a facade. And I feel like many people in my generation uh, don't see the Democrats as being very liberal, despite describing themselves as liberal. I would consider them liberal conservative, or even just conservative, and the Republicans more conservative. Uh, I hope that makes sense.
I'm not sure what makes sense in politics anymore these days. I know I'm confused. Ian Montgomery, I see you're posting some items in the chat. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, just briefly, I want to piggyback on what Doran, is that right?
Yes.
What Doran said is absolutely spot on. Um, it's obvious that there's a deep disconnect, and there are folks who feel that Democrats don't fight the good fight. They are spineless. They don't stand up for what is their apparent constituency. And Republicans seem to stand for nothing. They just operate on the idea that acquiring power is all that matters. And those of us who are watching this unfold are just wondering who stands for us because it's not Republicans and it's not Democrats.
So would you call yourself an independent?
I I I want to, but I hesitate at that distinction because I feel like there's a historic notion where independent stands for I'll vote R, but only in certain elections. I don't know if that makes sense. Some of the younger folks may not understand this. Um, Independent has a historic alignment with being conservative as a homesteader, as a notion of I'm conservative on certain issues that are economic, but when it comes to domestic or social issues, I don't care. I just don't want to be involved. So I don't even know that independent is a meaningful label anymore. I think the problem is that we don't have good labels because our politics have become so deeply uh, toxic that we can't even know what the labels mean anymore. And I think young people are just desperate to understand who stands for them.
Okay, let's shift over to Kaitlin McQuaid. You self-identify as a nonpartisan advocate. What does that mean, Kaitlin?
Yes, Jeff. Well, I am a nonpartisan advocate, and I would have to say that this means that I am open to hearing and I will support everyone in sharing their perspective. I want to facilitate, peaceful and respectful conversations. And pretty much my position as a nonpartisan advocate in California, it really comes from my background and my experience with being homeless. I was homeless for almost 3 years, about 10 years ago. And it was a really life-changing experience. And it has helped me to, see that there really is no point in half of the country disagreeing with the other half of the country. I mean, it kind of makes us unable to move. It just makes us unable to make decisions. And I think it's really, as far as in Southern California, you can see the results of the partisan issues and the just their behavior fighting with each other over the news. You can see the results of it in our neighborhoods and all the people that are experiencing homelessness right now, and it's too bad.
Errol, you are new to the crew. You've only been here a couple days, but you self-identify as a conservative. What is your take on where Gen Z is heading? And let's start talking more about the elections. There'll be an election tomorrow. There'll be one in 2026. There'll be another in 2028. How do you size things up?
Well, yeah, I kind of would consider myself a left conservative. I don't really like much labels that are people have been putting things on for years, but I started off very, very left. Like I probably was as red as you can be. Like I would have been the first one that McCarthy would have went after. But then after going through college, and leaving the country and then coming back, uh, I kind of began to notice the shift amongst my peers and myself, just a disdain for the Democratic Party because it just became seen as a joke amongst our generation. It was just like, oh, you liberal. It's like, and so it's really silly and stuff like that. But you hear like kids as young as like 7, like being like, oh, did I offend you, you liberal? So they just really put a bad reputation in an entire generation. So I think for the next elections, we're going to be seeing conservative sweeping the nation for